Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's now 11 a.m. here in the UK on the dot, so we'll now be beginning. We will, as more participants join. If this is your first session that you're joining, welcome to Start Network Online Assembly of 2024. It's my pleasure to be co-facilitating this important panel discussion today, which will be focusing on hub voices on localization, opportunities, challenges, and lessons from two cohorts. In this session, we'll be hearing directly from representatives of three different hubs from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Philippines, and South Sudan. Each are at unique stages of their development over the past 2 years. Joining us today in this panel, we have Anna Abalahin, the Deputy Executive Director for Code, a leading NGO in the Philippines. We have Roger Kayenga, the Hub Coordinator for the DRC Hub. We have Angelina Nyajima, who will be joining us in about half an hour, the Executive Director for Hope Restoration South Sudan. We also have David Burt, Head of Evidence and Learning at Start Network, and Joyce also in the background, the Senior Network Development Advisor at Start Network, and myself, Fazana Ahmed, I'm the Learning Advisor at Start Network. Our panelists today will be sharing valuable insights into the lessons they've learned and the challenges they've faced and the opportunities they see in their efforts to strengthen local humanitarian systems. I'm excited for the chance to learn from their experiences and discuss together how we can continue to advance locally led humanitarian action. I'd also like to introduce Tash Gu, who is the Research Officer at Start Network, who will be moderating the chat for us today. Throughout the discussion, we do encourage everyone to engage actively by sharing your reflections and questions in the chat box. We will have time towards the end of the session after hearing from the panelists to address some of your questions. And now, to get us started, I'd like to invite David Burt, who will be providing an overview of the systems change framework we're working within and discuss how we measure and capture evidence in these efforts. So without further ado, David, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fazana, and hello, everyone. As Fazana mentioned, I am David Burt. I'm the Head of Evidence and Learning at Start Network. And just to frame this conversation from the beginning, I'm going to speak a bit about the purpose that Start Network hopes to achieve, our vision, some of the strengths that have influenced the way that we look at our work, and talk about some of our strategic priorities and core questions for hubs going forward. So that I'll ask for the first slide, please. Thank you very much. So Start Network's purpose is ultimately to change the humanitarian system as we know it. We believe that the humanitarian system needs to be changed and improved in some critical areas, including but not limited to certain key challenges we've identified. Firstly, that funding is slow and reactive, that power, decision-making and resources are centralized in largely Western organizations, that practice is risk-averse and resistant to change, and that there is a lack of evidence about models and viable alternatives to the current ways of working. With this in mind, our vision, if I ask for the next slide, please, is to work with our hubs to try and combat some of these key challenges. So our vision for the future of humanitarianism is a system that is no longer characterized by these issues. We want to see a locally led and proactive humanitarian system that acts in advance of and in response to crises, that protects and is accountable to communities at risk of and affected by crisis. And this really was the kind of driving force behind the Hub initiative that began about 4 years ago. And next slide, please. If I talk a bit about our strengths as well. So Start Network has identified 4 key strengths that we have as an organization, which we are using to support the hubs in their work. Firstly, Start Network is a funder. So our funds and finance mechanisms, such as the Start Fund and Start Ready, enable us to demonstrate and evidence that faster and anticipatory funding backed by community priorities is a more efficient, impactful, and ethical approach to humanitarian action. We're an innovator, and we hope that our ability to experiment with new ideas and processes enables us to demonstrate evidence and export to our network alternatives to the status quo. We're an influencer, and we hope that our focus on practical action and evidence learning enables us to build coalitions for change and influence the external humanitarian aid system. And directly related to hubs, we are a networker, and our locally led network is the platform that enables us to aggregate and share ideas, services, and practice. And it really serves as our core and primary channel for systems change. The hubs are an alternative to the current way the system organizes, and our ambitions are for a self-functioning network to deliver on our vision for a locally led and locally accountable system. Our unique niche in the humanitarian system is to bring these strengths together in critical areas of work that address the challenges within the system. And this comprises our mission to develop, test, and spread new ways of collaborating, operating, and resourcing locally led, timely humanitarian action. Just to pick up on locally led quickly with the next slide. What do we mean by locally led? We mean that our operations aim to reduce barriers for local organizations to respond to crises through supporting them to develop the vision for change, access to resources, and for them to take on leading roles in governance structures across the START network. So this is our key thinking, behind the Hubs initiative. And if I talk a little bit about our strategic priorities from 2024 to 2026, which is the next slide, please. We are really hoping that we can achieve the impact that the locally led network, the hubs, enable us to aggregate and share ideas, services, and practice. And we want to build and diversify a network of hubs through our members and locally led hubs and support them on their journey to independence. And by the end of this time period, we want to evidence and demonstrate how the hubs and network model in general are sustainable and enable change in the humanitarian system. And these priorities have led us to identify some of the inquiry questions, some of which you'll hear from our panelists today as they answer. So I can have the next slide, please. So some of the key questions that we're asking in relation to hubs are, how are our hubs developing to meet local needs, to grow the membership and create a wider network for systems change? And how does the START network evolve to a position where it starts to self-organize and take on a life of its own, independent of the START network organization? With that in mind, we're going to hear from our panelists today on some of their own experiences in over the past few years in their hub journey. So I will pass to the next speaker. Thank you very much. Over to you, Anna. Thank you. And next slide, please.
Sorry, Anna, you're on mute.
Hi. Good day. Good evening. I'm Anna. Thank you, David. I will share with you today our experience here in the Philippines as we're on their baby steps going towards incubation. And but before I describe how we do it, let me tell you first, how does it look like here in the Philippines? Actually, as we speak, we just had 2 typhoons that just passed and 1 that is passing by our country. And we are currently still trying to respond and also to see what are the other efforts that we can do at the moment because of severe flooding. So in the Philippines, we're still at the top list of the World Risk Index 3 times in a row. And this is also because of the complex risk profile that we have, a combination of diverse exposures, high intensities, and high vulnerabilities. And then based on that study also, there's a lack of capacity, strengthening and empowerment of local actors. And to support that particular status is a study that was made by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative that says that we are not able to maximize or realize the full potential of utilizing local organizations as first responders. So that's the scenario that we're experiencing right now. Therefore, although we are considered a model for resilience of trying to bounce back, but bounce back in the same vicious cycle. So it's not bouncing back better at this point because our coordination mechanisms, although we have, they are fragmented, lacking, and limited. And we recognize that our duty bearers' efforts also need to be augmented and supported. That's why we have a long history of humanitarian assistance from different organizations internationally and locally. And even church-based organizations are also very active in trying to sustain humanitarian assistance in our country. And then we also are facing competition in accessing limited and shrinking resources between and among local and national NGOs and localized INGOs, which is it's the current scenario that we're also facing at the moment. And we see that this particular competition of the shrinking resources goes all the way to the fund source, which we know is at some point politically, with a politically driven prioritization. So basically what we are looking at right now is that even the Philippines has a very active and vibrant civil society, yet civic space and participation remains limited. We have a long history of community organizing and engagement, which is rooted in what we call in Filipino bayanihan spirit, or translated as a local collective action, which is the strength of our people in communities. And it's very much actually aligned to what START Network envisions for local communities, for it to be locally led. So for us, localization means that humanitarian actions within the continuum of development, because as you very well know, that one of the issues that we are also confronted is things are done in silos, whether operationally or in systems. So we want to be able to do that, to see a humanitarian action within the continuum of development that needs to be owned and led by the local and national actors, and also to better address the affected population. So, and we also recognize that localization is a process. So where we create an enabling environment for the devolution and shared, not just shift of power, but it's something that is shared, because we also don't want to displace certain people within this humanitarian system. And we want to make sure that that this shared or shifting of power be realized into a community-led and locally led approach in strong partnership with duty bearers and other stakeholders. So it's really knowing the roles that we have in the whole system. So hence we saw that there's a need to establish the PH Hub. And we saw that the START Network very much aligned with the goals that we have of what we want to do here in the Philippines. So that bayanihan spirit is very much aligned with START Network Hub's concept of collectives of local, national, international organizations of humanitarian responders operating in the same country or region through a vision of systems change to tackle the deep-rooted issues in humanitarian responses in the country and influence also the global humanitarian system. So the PH Hub stands from a transformative, equitable partnership, building on its strength of being a network of networks, because that is where we're actually starting from. Code NGO is a network of networks, and our members are also networks within its human and material assets, and breaking the silos existing among the different humanitarian actors. So for the PH Hub model, we are looking at three things, or the three pillars. One is localization, which is basically decentralization and devolution, bringing resources closer to crisis-affected population. And this can only happen if we are able to have an equitable partnership. And we are veering away from the term collaboration, because what we want to see is really real partnership. And transition to an ethical partnership practice built on developed trust, that recognizes and supports shifting of leadership and opportunities to local actors to consider context-based indigenous approaches in the way we respond to humanitarian needs. But this, we recognize, takes both time and resources. So capacitating local CSOs and NGOs working in communities to strengthen community-based plans and actions supporting local leadership as duty bearers and complementing the efforts of intermediary organizations. So we are currently doing mapping efforts mapping of efforts, resources, and also local assets and innovations within each of the different regions. For those of you who are not familiar with the Philippines, we are archipelagic. So we have 7,000 plus islands, and each of these island regions also have their own culture, background, language. So to be able to create a coordination hub, it's very important for us to also contextualize it. So we created from a national coordination hub, we also have regional hubs that are like mini national hubs working according to the context and needs and cultural assets of the place. And then we also want to show that that ensuring that relationship with intermediaries is more of a partnership and not subcontracting. So this happens in currently in the Philippines. There are consortium of different humanitarian actors with INGOs. Some of them are members of START Network, working with local NGOs and donor agencies. And we have seen that some members of our core team actually are also part of that consortium currently. So we see that as we move towards a hub, we're trying to see how we can already build on existing mechanisms and try to see how we can actually properly coordinate and orchestrate all these different efforts. So we're not really changing the current system as it is, but we're trying to understand where we can actually contribute. So another pillar is the collective innovation. So as I mentioned, we are a network of different organizations with diverse membership and advocacies who came together to address the gaps on common phenomenon affecting everyone on climate and human-induced disasters. So the network of networks with the national oversight of different regional hubs that are interconnected through its very platform, a well coordinated mechanism, as well as more efficient humanitarian response that is also a learning hub. So it's not just like a coordination platform, it will also be a learning hub of culturally sensitive, context-based, and innovative solutions for a more efficient response within the continuum of development. So complementing and building on the efforts of other stakeholders that are already being done here in their country. So we are actually working in a system of a culture of solidarity and amid diversity. And the last pillar is a localization business model that we are looking at of what would work best given our current condition and where we want to bring it forward. So localization need not be a financial zero-sum game, since it will open up new resources for humanitarian action. However, there is still a struggle for intermediaries to let go of their status as first receivers in respond mode. So we see that a better sound investment is in prevention than response. So that's something that we are really seeing. So more on disaster preparedness and anticipatory action is a way to go to be able to be more prepared and to respond better. And therefore, we hope that through the Page Hub, we will be able to advocate funding that should be allocated for disaster preparedness and anticipatory action. And the core of this is community preparedness through organizing and capacity strengthening. Here in the Philippines, this is something that is being pursued even by the UN through their SURF program, which they included AA in their SURF, of which the ERC flagship initiative tool is tucked in. but this is still undergoing intense discussion on how to really operationalize this. However, also we have examples of already initiatives in the Philippines as well, where anticipatory action is being done in disaster preparedness through the programs of START Network. And part of it actually, we are interfacing with these programs of START Network Philippines under the Start Ready of DRF. And then some NGOs already are doing AAs. So we would also do simulation exercises, which is we found very helpful to really see where the gaps are, so that when the anticipatory action needs to be executed, we already have addressed some of those possible gaps that were made during the simulation exercise. So as we see that within this context of the
Sorry,
Philippines,
Anna. Just in, prompting to, if you don't mind wrapping up so we can pass to the next speaker.
Yes. Actually, I was just going to say that with this scenario in the Philippines, we are very much looking forward to something for the PH Hub that will contribute also in data and information, which is very much needed in the coordination system. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. I will now hand over to Roger. If you can speak to us about how the DRC Hub is enabling locally led decision-making and how you've ensured community voices are reflected in hub interventions. So over to you, Roger.
Roger, sir, you're on mute.
Oui, je disais ceci, je suis Roger Kayenga, je suis le secrétaire exécutif diable de la RDC. Et la RDC se trouve au centre de l'Afrique pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas la localisation de la RDC. Et je vais vous parler un peu de l'approche communautaire dans le cadre de la vision du hub de la RDC, parce que nous prenons comme cheval de bataille l'approche communautaire. Devant les crises climatiques, d'inondations, les inondations en RDC et les conflits en RDC, le hub de la RDC a pris une option de contribuer au changement du système avec des actions proactives, mais en impliquant beaucoup plus les communautés, de sorte que les actions soient gérées localement au niveau des communautés. Le modèle des hubs de la RDC, c'est un modèle qui est appuyé par les Start Network pour faire avancer l'action locale. Nous avons expérimenté un cas que je vais vous présenter ici pour répondre aux inondations fluviales au niveau de la RDC. Je voulais rappeler d'abord ici que ces derniers temps, les inondations fluviales en RDC sont devenues récurrentes et ça nécessite des réponses plus proactives pour essayer de réduire l'impact des communautés. Alors, avec l'appui d'un programme qui est soutenu par Start Network, le programme Start Ready, nous avons expérimenté la mise en place d'un système d'alerte précoce à base communautaire lié aux inondations. C'est un système où les communautés elles-mêmes définissent les problèmes, ils évaluent les besoins, ils mettent en place un plan communautaire de préparation. Et c'est ce plan communautaire de préparation qui doit être maintenant mis en œuvre. Mais de manière durable, nous avons estimé que les communautés doivent être renforcées dans la préparation, l'anticipation des risques d'inondation. C'est pourquoi en RDC, nous avons mis en place un système d'alerte précoce basé sur la communauté. C'est-à-dire, c'est la communauté qui surveille la levée des eaux, la montée des eaux du fleuve, et c'est la communauté qui participe même à la levée des alertes par rapport au niveau de montée des eaux du fleuve. Et ça, nous avons expérimenté à Kindu. Et notre ambition, c'est d'étendre ces systèmes parce que nous sommes en train de faire un apprentissage sur ces modèles. Nous allons l'étendre sur les 3 sites qui sont ciblés par les modèles qui est mis en place. Pourquoi est-ce que nous sommes arrivés à ça? Parce que nous avons constaté qu'il y a des fois, il y a des inondations sur le terrain pendant que le modèle ne déclenche pas, alors qu'il y a des inondations. Donc, les communautés sont bien placées pour pouvoir décider sur la manière dont ils doivent se préparer, ils doivent anticiper et ils doivent développer des mécanismes locaux de résilience. Et c'est pour cela que nous avons mis en place ce système d'alerte précoce. Mais également, ces mêmes communautés, en cas de crise, ce sont les mêmes communautés qui arrivent à faire les ciblages, après être renforcées, bien sûr. Il faut le ciblage des personnes qui sont à risque et ils peuvent même identifier les endroits qui sont à risque, et même aussi les endroits de localisation. Donc, nous avons estimé qu'avec ces mécanismes, renforcer les mécanismes au niveau communautaire, donner le pouvoir de décision au niveau communautaire, nous aiderait à beaucoup plus contribuer au changement du système. Parce que là, au moins, la communauté a une voix, la communauté participe et décide sur la manière dont il peut se mettre à l'abri des risques. Et autre chose, les acteurs locaux qui sont dans la zone, locaux qui sont dans la zone, ce sont ces acteurs locaux qui connaissent les contextes. Ce sont ces acteurs locaux qui connaissent la situation de ces milieux-là. Alors, dans le cadre de notre programme de Stat Funds, ce sont ces acteurs locaux qui remontent l'alerte, donc ils lèvent l'alerte. Ce sont ces acteurs locaux qui participent à la validation des alertes humanitaires et les acteurs locaux au niveau des hubs de la RDC participent à la sélection des projets de réponses rapides, des réponses proactives aux urgences. Avec cette approche, ça montre que l'acteur local est placé au centre de l'action. Et nous estimons que c'est quelque chose qui peut nous être très utile. Autre chose, c'est que les hubs de la RDC est diversifié. Donc, nous collaborons avec nous avons les membres qui sont des ONG nationales, ONG internationales, les scientifiques, les gouvernements et les secteurs privés, en estimant que chacun doit jouer un rôle dans la réponse et dans l'anticipation aux crises. Mais le besoin, c'est qu'il faut plus de financement pour accompagner cette communauté, plus de financement pour accompagner ces acteurs locaux afin de réduire les risques, l'impact causé par ces crises au niveau de la RDC. Voilà quelques éléments que je voulais partager avec vous, sur lesquels nous sommes en train de mener un apprentissage. Et nous savons que nous allons le partager avec tout le monde afin que vous puissiez aussi mettre vos feedbacks et vos inputs. Merci.
Brilliant. Thank you, Roger. We are still waiting for the third panelist, who I believe has not been able to join just yet. So whilst we wait in the meantime, we have had one question in the chat, which I will just flag up and share with the panelists. So we've had one question from Anis Danish from Hans Pakistan, which is, what has been the role of INGOs and local government in the localization process? I'll hand that over to perhaps to Anna to begin with, and then over to Roger, whilst we wait for other questions. I'd also like to invite, if there are other Hub members in the session today, it would be brilliant to hear some reflections and questions from you in the chat. So yeah, over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Franza. Here in the Philippines, there is a devolution of task in governance. So the local governments are very much strengthened in that sense. So a lot of work happens in the local communities, and they're the ones who take the lead. So the duty bearers in local communities are the ones who take the lead. Also, local governments. So when we talk about duty bearers, we're talking of duty bearers in every level. Because in each of the community, there's like a barangay or the town leader. Then you also have a mayor, a province. So it goes up different levels. But basically, the response, even in a development scenario, it's the local government who are actually pushing within their area of locality the different types of humanitarian response that we have. However, as I said, since it's very localized, there is a need for national government to see how everything will be orchestrated, and to make sure that when the local governments are actually overwhelmed, just like in the recent Typhoon Christine, that our local governments are really overwhelmed with the flooding and the response, that they are not able to do the other aspects of recovery that which the national government is expected to support, and unfortunately the other agencies are just waiting for government to ask what is the need. So there's that struggle also of ego somehow between our national government and the type of assistance that they would be asking for. But then we have INGOs who somehow intermediates and see what are the specific needs in each of these localities. So that's how it works with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. It looks like Angelina has just joined us. So if you were there, Angelina, if you can just unmute and put your
Hi.
video on.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we are. Hi, Angelina. Thanks for joining us. If you're ready to go, I might actually hand over to you to share your reflections from your experiences in the South Sudan hub. I can just see that it's connecting the audio, actually.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Hi, Angelina. Can you hear us okay? We might be having some connection issues. Whilst we wait for Angelina to connect, I will. I will actually hand over to Roger. We had a question, an anonymous question around who funds these community early warning systems. Is it local organizations or the local government? If you could speak a bit more to this.
En fait, comme on n'avait pas assez de temps pour expliciter, c'est que c'est un système qui est coordonné et qui est collaboratif. Donc, c'est un système où la communauté, les comités locaux de la population avec les systèmes d'alerte du gouvernement, mais également avec les systèmes, les modèles GBA que les hubs a mis en place avec l'appui des Stat Network. Donc, c'est un système qui est coordonné au niveau local avec le gouvernement local, mais également avec l'appui des scientifiques. C'est pour cela que je vous ai dit que le hub de la RDC est diversifié. Donc, il y a l'appui des scientifiques des universités pour appuyer le processus. Donc, un système qui est coordonné de manière à ce que tout le monde, chacun pour ce qui le concerne, joue un rôle dans ce système d'alerte précoce à base communautaire. Merci.
Thanks, Roger. I'm just going to check if we can hear Angelina now with the video off. I think I can hear some sound.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So if you're ready, I'll hand over to you to share your experiences from the South Sudan Hub.
Yeah. Yeah, for the experience of South Sudan Hub, South Sudan Hub has been almost 4 years remotely, but it's recently that we had a restructuring of the leadership. And learning from the other hubs that we have in other countries, partly our priority has been around making South Sudan Hub more visible in terms of making joined in other coordination forums that are within the South Sudan, particularly like the NGO forum, and also within the humanitarian space where we have the humanitarian country team. And that is to amplify the voices of the South Sudan Hub. When you look at the membership, we have 10 members, 5 from NGOs and 5 from national. And we are ambitioning in the next assembly meetings in Bangkok, we are suggesting to have additional of 3 national partners that will make it more, not 50-50 like it look like currently. So that will make it almost 70% of the locally owned and led initiative. Because when you look at our a vision part of it, it's mostly around a localized community-centric hub, which is going to respond mostly to the needs and defined by the affected communities. This has been lacking mostly within the humanitarian space, where a lot of program designs are not really community-driven. You found they have been designed either in the headquarters, but then they are not community-owned or what represent the needs of the communities. Back to also the vision that we have at South Sudan Hub is to offer inclusive humanitarian response, which is defined by the need of the community as entail. So when we look at this network, the humanitarian case, they are really, it's more for the community crisis and also the local who are the grassroots at the center from the beginning of crisis. They live within the community and they are going nowhere. So how do we empower the local NGOs, the CBOs, the women-led organizations that are at the grassroots living with the communities? And that is the thinking we are driving at. The other part is what are the opportunities at South Sudan Hub? When we look at the opportunities we have, being part of the START network is already an opportunity that give us an opportunity to also have the voices at the global spaces, which we've not been in a position to get on our own. The other thing is also having an organized hub where we learn from our counterpart, which are NGOs that are members of the hub. We are also going to learn more on capacity building and benefit from there, which will translate to the community programming that we are doing. South Sudan is a country that is also affected by the flood, and we've been in flood since 2019. So how do we also take advantage in terms of early warning system that will bring in coordination and cooperation with the governments, where we could have the upper hands on what are the early signs, how do we improve from them, and how can we also do more early warning awareness to the communities so that they are not just getting surprised by flood in most cases. Also benefiting from issues to do with the other networks, like those that have gone ahead of us. When we look at the Pakistan hub has gone ahead of many of us, how do we also get those learning and peer learning to benefit from those? And what have been the challenges? The biggest challenge has been we barely get like a flexible funding or multi-year funding for the organizations. So as a local partner, you rely on the donors, and with their restrictions, sometimes it becomes impossible to really do what the community wants. So you end up representing the donor, but then with the disadvantage. How do we change those shifts? Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. We've actually just had a question in the chat for you, which is what is the process of identifying the hub leadership in the South Sudan, as there are very many agencies, local and INGOs, and what are the steps that you are making to be visible? As we know, at this moment we don't know much about the local hub.
Thank you for the questions. We had an induction meetings which happened on the 2nd of September, where the colleague from the START network came to South Sudan, and we had a 4-day meeting, which was facilitated by CAFOD, which is our host agency in the country. So during the induction meetings, we had an election where we selected the chair, which is myself as the South Sudan hub chair, and then we have the co-chair is also a national partner, and then we have a steering committee member from the international partners. These 3 leadership are the ones who sit in the table to make much of the decision and discuss whatever come to South Sudan hub together with the entire membership, and jointly we share also with the CAFOD, which is our host agency. This is to build the accountability in terms of decision making. So it's not one person taking all the decisions that have not been discussed and agreed by the members. Thank you.
Thanks, Angelina. There's some interest as well from the chat around the role of national NGOs in the DRC hub and the understanding around localization. So maybe I'll hand over to Roger for this question.
OK. Au niveau de la RDC, le rôle des ONG internationales, nous avons constaté que sont très peu qui sont actifs, qui sont engagés. Et la plupart travaillent en ordre dispersé. Mais nous avons estimé qu'il était important que les membres de la RDC, surtout les ONG internationales, puissent s'engager beaucoup plus dans les hubs de la RDC, mais aussi un travail à synergie au niveau du pays pour faire avancer l'action locale. Les rôles des acteurs internationaux qui sont actifs, ils jouent le rôle beaucoup plus d'appui technique, accompagnement technique. Jusque-là, c'est ce que nous avons constaté, nous avons vécu, mais également ils sont dans les conseils d'administration. Il faut partie du conseil d'administration, mais dans les conseils d'administration, nous avons 60% des ONG nationales et autour de 40% des ONG internationales. Merci.
Thanks, Roger. There was also, it wasn't so much a question, it was a suggestion, but it kind of reflects some of the themes coming up from this discussion around capacity strengthening. So this was from Joseph. The ideas which could bring quick changes with effective impact in our societies and communities is the capacity building through the skills development targeting the youth. Skills such as vocational training, which will draw attention of the youth quickly to realize their potential locally in their communities. Roger, you spoke about the building capacity of communities with the early warning system. And also, Anna, you spoke about this kind of working with, you've got given the context, working in partnership with different kind of organizations in the community. Perhaps I'll hand over to Anna first, if you've got anything that you'd like to add and to this question or this suggestion.
Well, definitely, I agree that we should include the youth as part of the programming that we will do, because for one, they will be the one who will continue, because if we're talking of sustainability, they are key players in this whole sustainability conversation. And also they will be the one who will benefit whatever efforts that we are having right now in building the hubs and also in changing the system itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. And Roger, did you want to add some reflections from the DRC context around engaging building the capacity of the community on the early warning system?
Oui, ce que je voulais ajouter, c'est, en fait, c'est plus un renforcement des capacités mutuelles, parce que ce n'est pas un renforcement de capacités ascendantes, mais c'est un renforcement de capacités mutuelles par des échanges avec les communautés locales qui ont déjà des connaissances traditionnelles. Les communautés locales ont déjà des connaissances traditionnelles, mais aussi avec les connaissances traditionnelles au niveau des communautés et en collaboration avec les autres acteurs, que ce soit internationaux, que ce soit les acteurs scientifiques. Et ensemble, dans cet échange d'expériences, on essaie un peu de mixer la théorie à la pratique. Nous estimons qu'ensemble, un renforcement des capacités mutuelles pourrait avoir beaucoup plus d'impact que d'amener quelque chose qui vient seulement d'en haut. Nous estimons que nous pouvons apprendre les uns des autres. Merci.
Thanks, Roger. There were also a few questions in the chat in relation to the role of INGOs. We had one earlier around why many maybe don't want to get involved in localization. I don't know if anyone in the panel would like to discuss from your experiences. I'll leave this one open.
Yeah, can I pick?
Yeah, Angelina.
Yeah. The colleague of us, particularly the challenge of localization not being properly implemented, because large financial organizations tend to take resources. The biggest challenge is if they have the resources, is there like a strategy to also subcontract the national, the smaller organizations that are coming up, which in most cases the donors really not put those in practice. Those conditions are really not coming out, and that is where the challenge is coming on how we have all the resources for the international and the local partners do not benefit from it. So I think it goes back to the donor side, that if they give resources to the international organization, or have the modality, making sure that those organizations that receive resources partner with the local partners, and that will reduce the conflict. Because at the end of the day, there are roles that to play, and there's a role that international is going to play. There's no one that can do it all. But then when the structure is not in place, it makes it so difficult and the local partners. And that's where the crisis and the complaint is popping up, that we as the national partner are not given the spaces, and then the localization agenda becomes lip service. It's not being practiced. There's no practicality in it. Thank you.
Thanks, Angelina. I'm afraid we are at time and we do have another session after this. Please do continue the discussion. We do have other sessions on the agenda, including one on power dynamics and locally led accountability further on in the agenda. The next session is actually on looking at the Hub Health Check Committee and how that's being used to strengthen locally led accountability. Thank you to our panelists for joining us and for everyone in the audience. We've had some really powerful insights from each of the Hub leaders. So thank you again to Anna, to Roger, and to Angelina for joining us. And yes, please continue to engage in the next sessions.